Welcome to our webinar, Transitioning from Cartograph 8 to Cartegraph OMS. My name is Damian Waid, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator here at Cartograph. And here with me is Todd Henderson, Cartograph Solutions Consultant, and Quint Pertzsch, Customer Solutions Manager. And for those of you not familiar with Todd, he worked with the town of Marina, Arizona for over 6 years, most recently as the Utilities Resource Coordinator. And while at Marina, he implemented Cartograph on all levels, in the field, in the office, and eventually managing the system as co-administrator for the city. And Quint was the GIS manager at the city of Golden, Colorado for 14 years and implemented Cartograph Navigator in 1999, where it was fully integrated with GIS, and he has been with Cartograph for 3.5 years. And before we get started, we are accepting your questions, and to submit a question at any time during the course of the webinar, select the Q&A feature located at the top or right-hand side of your screen, and questions will be answered at the conclusion of the webinar. And we'll answer as many questions as time allows, and without further ado, I'll turn things over to Todd and Quint.
Thank you, Damian. It's good to be with all of you today to give you this webinar regarding transitioning from Cartograph 8, or Navigator as we call it, into our new Operations Management System, or OMS. You'll hear that acronym used a lot. So we're really looking forward, Quint and I, to presenting this webinar to you, and hopefully by the time you're done, you'll see just how much easier it is to use, much more intuitive, cleaner, and really a completely redesigned system. So I'll kind of turn it over to Quint and let him talk a little bit about his areas too.
Okay, thanks, Todd, and thank you everyone for being here this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. As Todd starts to maneuver through the system, you'll notice that he's going to start logging in with his login credentials to get to the main page of OMS. I can speak for both Todd and myself as being longtime Navigator users. Both of us use Navigator extensively in our lives as past and former clients, and had to learn OMS from the ground up. So it was quite a different experience for us learning OMS, and I can safely say that it was much easier for both of us to learn OMS than it was to pick up on all the nuances of Navigator. And right now, Todd is at our home screen, and right off the bat, we see some significant differences from what Navigator looked like and compared to what OMS looks like. Todd, you want to tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah, this is a very good illustration of the amount of data that OMS produces. It's on one page. This is our home screen, or our dashboard, we call it. And this gives you some really high-level information about the system, what's going on, where the work is at, some roll-up costs. I have my assignments here on my task list, some assets, and other items that you really want to see in a kind of a big 50,000-foot overview if you're watching over the system.
Yeah, I think, Todd, the biggest thing for me is the interface as a whole is completely different from the Navigator world. Those of us that were familiar with how Navigator operated, you're going to notice a lot of similar features, but the interface itself is a huge change from where we came from.
Exactly. And I'm going to go ahead and we got 5 pillars here. We talk about the 5 pillars of the system, and that's request, work, assets, resources, and reports. So I'm going to navigate to requests, and we'll go over reports later, but we're going to get an idea of kind of, excuse me, what Quint talked about, where, you know, the interface really is just radically different. It's a web-based system. That's one difference. There's, you know, just a completely different look and feel as we go through. So I've opened it up here to the request page.
And so, Todd, help me understand what exactly a request is. I'm assuming that a request could be something that comes in from a phone call from a citizen. Are there other request types that we have?
Sure. Just like you mentioned, that phone call can come in, and a lot of people do that. Also, if you have an open 311 system in your organization, it can port through that way via integration. You can have this YourGov, our system, excuse me, that's offered for mobile platforms, and you can even link that to your website so that it could port in all of the requests that come in from citizens, whether they're out, you know, taking a walk and notice that something is not right, and they want to take a picture of that and send that in. All those different ways requests can come into the system.
Okay, great.
I'll navigate now to the work page. And on here, we can see that kind of all of our tasks that have been assigned are displayed on the map. And we can see through this that there's obviously a lot of work going on, and it has kind of the same look and feel as well.
Yeah, one of the things, Todd, that I noticed right away, or as I started using OMS, a significant difference from how the Navigator world handled work and how OMS handles work, is that you'll notice on the map, we'll see a lot of different shapes and figures. That's because OMS takes on the spatial characteristics of the assets that work is assigned to. So you'll see we have some linear features, some point features, and some polygon features. It's really interesting to be able to see the types of work that we have, not only on the map where it is, but the shape and the texture of what those assets look like.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, and really gives you some a good idea of again how much different the system is when you open this up and see it right away. And it's just very easy to get a really nice picture of where you're at, what you're going to be doing, and as you said, those spatial characteristics of each one of those work items. And then I'll also open up the Assets tab, and we'll see here that, again, I've got a couple of assets set up here, and those obviously display on the map just the same.
So one thing that I'm noticing as you're going through the system and now being an OMS user myself is that regardless of the page that you're on, from request to work to assets, the same look and feel is available across the system. We have a table of contents on the left-hand side. We have a table on the bottom that's showing us some information, and we have a map in the middle of the screen on virtually every screen. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I think that's very important for everyone to understand that OMS has been designed in a way that it's simple and easy to use across an organization. And the system has been designed to have the same look and feel regardless of where we are in the system.
Exactly, and that provides that familiarity. So when I'm trying to learn the system, I know when I went over from the Navigator world to OMS, it took me a while to learn Navigator. When I transitioned into OMS, which is my first assignment when I came to Cartograph, it took less than half the time to learn OMS as it did Navigator. So I personally can attest to its ease of use and its much more intuitive feel to it.
And I think Todd and I can both speak to that, having been on site with various clients on how user-friendly the system is and how adoptable the system is for people that are just starting out.
It is. We're getting much higher user adoption rates than before. So I think that's a good indicator of how easy the system is to use and navigate.
Exactly. So Todd, I see we're on our assets page, and it looks like you have signs and pavement out. How easy is it for me as a user to add another asset to my map?
Well, it is. It's very easy. It's just a matter of choosing the drop-down bar where it says select asset type. And if I want to add, say, parks, I just hit, once I select it, I hit add, and my parks appear. And as it does, I see that we have this color here. I may not want my parks to be turquoise colored, because I don't know of any turquoise parks. I'm going to want mine to be green. So very easy to change that color. And because of Cartograph's persistence technology, because I'm logged in as Todd Henderson, regardless of which computer I'm on, because it is, as we said earlier, a web-based system, I have my login credentials. So regardless of which computer I'm on within my organization, I log in with my credentials, and my page is going to have the exact same look and feel as it did when I left it.
So you're saying, Todd, if you change the color of parks from that aqua color to green, and I'm colorblind, so I'm trusting that green is the right color you're telling me.
Yes.
That if I log off for the day and come back in tomorrow, all of the changes that I've made with my login credentials will stay exactly the same?
That is correct.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. You don't have to go and recreate things after the fact.
Yeah, exactly. And then also anybody, you know, however they want their color scheme or asset layers set up, they can certainly do it that suits them. So if I only work in parks, I can have all the parks assets up and have the colors I want, and very simple.
That's great. Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about filters. I know as a Navigator user, Cartograph had a very powerful filter builder. But if you didn't use it a lot, it might have been a little bit cumbersome or tricky to remember. Does OMS have a filtering capability? For example, if I want to look for a specific type of pavement, could I easily find that information?
Yeah. Again, OMS was created. I'm just going to simply hit this arrow to the left of pavement, and you can see a dialog box comes up where I can select a field to filter by. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and put pavement classification, and then I just add that. And I'm going to say my pavement classification is asphalt. It goes from 110 segments down to 29. So these are all of my asphalt pavement segments. The map redraws, and you can see that that has happened. We've got 29 segments of pavement now.
Wow, it's a pretty easy filter. Even I could do something like that.
It is very easy by design.
All right, so here's another question for you regarding filtering. What if I wanted to build a little bit more of a unique filter, and I'm going to just use an example of signs. Signs are a pretty easy asset for people to understand. Let's say I want to task you, Todd, with telling me and showing me where all of the stop signs are in our community, but I can't tell you what the MUTCD code is for that. How would I go about doing that?
Okay, very good. And, you know, that is, you know, this gives you the ability, even if I'm not familiar with the MUTCD codes, if I'm not a person who works in signs a lot but needs to have that because my manager or supervisor asked me for that, again, I'm choosing that filter of MUTCD code, that field, and I'm just going to put is, and because I don't know that, I'm just going to put in stop, and it's going to give me that information on stop signs right there so that I can choose that and select the stop sign that, you know, that layer of stop signs that I want to see in it. So it gives me a really simple way to pick that, choose that stop sign and pick that from the drop-down list. And my computer is being a little wonky here, so there we go. We got it for R1-1. So now we know that R1-1 is the MUTCD code for stop sign. And then you can see my asset layer goes from, excuse me, goes from the number of signs I had down to 15. So now I've got 15 stop signs. So.
And now what if I wanted to change the layer name? Can I go ahead and do that as well? So I don't like sign, maybe I change that to stop signs and change the color like I did for the parks?
Sure. There's a stop sign, and again, if you want to change the color and you want a bright red, you can do that. And as you can see, when I was navigating through my stop sign, I accidentally went into my pavement, so I can name that and preserve that. So now I'm back on my pavement again. So very easy to not only filter, but also rename. The good thing about these filters, too, is the fact that I can preserve these filters and keep them there, so I could just check on or check off as I want to. So therefore, I could always have stop signs as one of my filters up.
So simply by double-clicking the layer name, I can change that, and then simply by clicking the color, I can change that as well, all based on my login credentials.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go take a look at a specific asset. And I understand from using OMS that regardless of the asset that we're talking about, assets are assets. They all have the same look and feel. Nomenclature obviously changes depending on what we're looking at. Let's go take a look at a specific asset, in this case a sign, and let's dissect that a little bit.
Okay. I'll go ahead and zoom in so I can choose the individual asset. And with my tooltip, I can get a summary of the sign, so a really quick view. A really nice feature to have if I just need to find some really quick data about its condition, cost, the picture, other high-level information about what kind of sign it is and what prediction and condition group it is, etc.
So when you clicked on that, it looked like this dialog box comes up and it gives me basically, safe to say, a quick peek into some top-level attribute information about this particular record?
Sure, exactly.
And I also noticed that as you click on that on the map, the table view highlights as well.
Yes, it does. That way you know exactly which asset it is. It also turns magenta on the map, any asset that you select.
Interesting. Okay, so what if I wanted to go and view a more detailed view of this particular sign? How would I go about doing that?
Well, a couple ways. You could hit view here in the column, or just hit view from the tip there, and that will navigate you into, excuse me, into the asset. And now we're drilled down into the individual asset. So you can see right away we have a ribbon, and this is going to give you high-level information. You see we got the picture and other information, a total cost to date and things like that. And this is not unique to signs. So any asset that you would pull up is going to have this ribbon with the various attribute information unique to that asset, as well as all this information that you're seeing too. So each asset, regardless of its type, will have attribute information related to that asset type.
Okay. And then I noticed that the estimated OCI, or overall condition index, shows up in a total cost to date. So I'm assuming that cost to date is cradle to grave costing for all of the things that we've done to that particular asset?
Exactly, and that's what's interesting. If we go by and see a stop sign and we think, well, that sign cost X amount of dollars based on what we know signs cost, there's more to it than that. We've done maintenance, we've maybe changed the sign, cleaned the sign, inspected it. Those are all of the roll-up costs. So that is really the true cost of what this sign costs your organization.
Okay. Well, let's scroll down a little bit and talk about some of the different section headers or how we can get to those locations on this particular form.
Sure. Obviously we've got the map centric again, just like we did before, where we can see where the asset is located, and then we can either scroll down, and here we're going to get our location information, or it'll just simply hit the hyperlink and it will take you down here to all of the details and show you everything really that you want to see about this particular asset. We've got some attribute information here. You can certainly add fields if you would like to add a field here. We've got the METCD code and all that, as well as a picture that comes with every sign. We'll have the METCD code sign there. And then also, as I said, if you wanted to add a field like maybe subdivision or something like that, it's just simply a matter of going into the administrator section and adding the field. Those with permissions can do so, and you can create the fields that you need for your particular asset information.
So in other words, if you have a particular schema for your organization, or you have certain fields of information that don't necessarily come out of the box, or you follow, let's say, the local government information model, and some of those fields aren't necessarily in Cartograph, I can easily add those and track that information.
Yes, you can. It's very easy to add a field and create really the attribute information that you want in each individual asset.
Great. Okay, what else do you want to show me?
Well, we've got inspections here. That's obviously a huge thing that we do on signs and other assets as well. I can actually click on, just like we did anything, the view button here. I can go back in time, if you will, and see that we've done an inspection. And Quint, you did this inspection, so maybe you can talk about it a little bit.
Sure. One of the big differences, as you're starting to see through the course of OMS, is everything's on a page. So from the Navigator world, we had to go to the Inspection tab or the Attachment tab. Here, Todd has opened up the Inspection tab and the actual inspection record from when I went out and inspected the sign back in September of last year. And Todd, if we scroll down, we're going to see some pretty similar information to what we had in the Navigator world, in particular the condition categories. Just like in the Navigator world, I can set up unique condition categories for any particular asset type. Those will all have weights associated to those, so it helps determine what the inspected OCI or overall condition index is. In this case, there's only one condition category. It's the sign itself, and it's on a sliding star scale, 1 to 5 stars. It's a 1 to 100 rating. I rated this 4.5 stars, gave it a 90 overall condition index. What's interesting about the inspections, and a big difference from how we handled those in the Navigator world, is that not only do I have an inspection notes category where I could put in specific things that I've observed during the course of this inspection, but as a client, I was always asking for attachments to be part of the inspection record. And we can see that there was actual attachment of me going out and doing the retro readings for this particular sign attached to this inspection. So I can have a pictorial history of all of our inspected records if I want to go back in time.
Sure.
And Todd, if we hit our back button, I really want to highlight the fact that this shows our persistence technology again in a different way of taking us right back to the exact same spot on the last screen that we were on.
Yeah, exactly, and in the same location on the screen. It doesn't just reload the page. So that's obviously a huge thing when you're trying to navigate between screens. So you'll end up at exactly the same place where you left off. One of the other interesting things too is we navigate to the task. This obviously is a huge item. This is where this total cost to date number comes from, and this is all of the excuse me, all of the work that's been done on this particular sign. We can see that we've got completed tasks. We've got 7 of those. We've got a planned task. If I want to see just the planned task, it's a matter of checking on or checking off any one of these, whether it's projected, planned, in progress, completed, or canceled. I can see all of the tasks that have been assigned and what's going on with this asset. This kind of reminds you of the old event log in Navigator.
Yeah, it really does. I think I'd like to call it maybe the event log on steroids, because not only can like Todd filtered and turned off the completed tasks or the canceled tasks, but you can also go and look at the actual task that's been completed. So if we take a look at task ID number 1483, Todd, so there's a hyperlink there. If Todd clicks on that, it will take us right to that work record where all of our resources have been entered in, and not only showing us where the spatial location is, but across the top, the cost of doing this one cleaning activity, $580 total, made up of labor, equipment, material, and incidental costs. Again, highlighting the fact, Todd, if we hit our back button, we're right back to the exact same spot.
Exactly. Really, really handy, obviously, when we do that. Another really, I think, a cool thing that we have with this, excuse me, obviously, as I've always said, you know, signs don't just hang in the air. They have supports, and you can link assets. So not just with signs and supports, but other assets can be linked. It might be a water network or something like that, where you want to attach the main to the manhole or something like that. So you've got linked assets here, and we can see right here that we do have a linked asset, and see, and again, either hyperlink or hit the view, we can view that support.
So basically what you're showing me, Todd, is that I can go from one top-level asset to another top-level asset page right from a hyperlink, rather than going into a module to a module to a module.
Yeah, exactly. Much, much easier to navigate. So again, you're going to see some high-level information about this support and some attribute information, anything else that's been done. But the other thing is we can see also, whoops, I went too far. I meant to go to my linked assets. We can see that we've actually got 5 signs attached to this support. So you're going to have that information too. And again, just like you said, if I want to view any one of these signs, I simply navigate to it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about attachments while we're here, Todd. Looks like you have a JPEG image. I'm assuming that I can attach any basically type of file that I want.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of hitting the edit button. I can pick some information. I can pick your barking dog here, and now he's part of the record. Whoops. And then if I want that to be my avatar, This little insignia here tells me it's the primary attachment, which simply means that that's the picture that will show. If I want to obviously take my barking dog away from this, it's just a matter of hitting delete. It will ask you, do you really want to delete this? I do, and it's that simple. So very, very simple to add attachments.
These are all based on permissions that the end user has. So not everyone would be available to either add an attachment or certainly delete an attachment. So you can really configure the system for different roles for users.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very important, obviously, to have permissions based on the role that the person has in the organization. So very easy to set those up when you set up the system and make sure everyone has the access that they need while restricting access from those who really don't need access to certain parts of the software.
Okay, let's hit our back button, Todd, and I want to get back to our sign record, and I want to switch gears a little bit more and talk about reports.
Okay.
As a Navigator user, I know both of us had to print out lots of reports. One of the things I think that you always like to mention is as soon as I hit the print button on a report, it's out of date, which is a really good idea, really good concept. But let's say I did want to print out a report on this particular asset. Is there an easy way that I can do that?
Yes. Right here in the asset record, I just go up here. It says run report, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to run a report on this particular sign. So as this report loads, we're going to find out some information about the historical activity that's been done on this sign, its cost. So you see the cost that we already saw to date up there, and some attribute information. And again, you can see the condition and some of the activities and what they cost, as well as any expenses, in this case, in the last 30 days.
Yeah, that's great. I can see at least that one task that was just completed, the cleaning task that we were looking at. Now, what if I wanted to add some more content here, like either more columns of information, more fields of information, or potentially even a picture or a logo? Can I do that?
Yeah, you certainly can. You could add a picture here of that avatar that we saw of the stop sign. You can add fields here if you want some more information. Like again, we mentioned that subdivision field or something similar. Whatever attribute information you want here. If you wanted maybe total cost instead of just what it's cost the last 30 days, excuse me, that's okay too. You can add different columns of information here and really give it the look and feel that you would like to see.
Okay, let's close this report. And I noticed as you were talking about the 5 pillars of OMS: requests, work assets, resources, and reports. I'm curious about this whole reports section. Can we take a look at that?
Sure. We'll go navigate over there.
And it looks like, from the Navigator days, if I wanted to run a report, there was a specific part of the module where I could go and take a look at those reports. But this looks like it's set up a little bit differently, where I have the groups of assets and I can go and take a look at reports based on the asset type.
Exactly. I can give you maybe a good example of, I'll just go on pavement. I know is a common one that we report on.
Yeah, it looks like you have a number of different pavement reports. Do you have, I know in Navigator, we were always tasked with maybe putting some grouping available with the report or doing some mathematical equations like a summary or an average. Does OMS have that capability in the reporting engine?
Yes. As you can see, we have several reports available here. A good one to illustrate that is our estimated OCI by street. When you talk about calculations and figuring up averages and things like that, this has a really cool feature to it. This report does, because it's an estimated OCI by street. So you can tell we have our streets listed here and the various segments that are with those streets. Here on 41st Street, we've got a couple pavement segments. 42nd Street, we've got 4 of them. So regardless of how many you have, it's going to take those, it's going to average the OCI and divide that and get your average for the OCI. This is to me, a really nice way to say, how do my streets compare one to another? And just like any of these reports, you know, I could put some different information here if I wanted to, but this is a good example of some of the calculations it'll perform and some of the really cool features it has, is, especially this one doing the average OCI or estimated OCI by street and building out an average for you.
So a lot of the same features and functionality that were available in the Navigator report writer are still available in the OMS world.
Exactly.
Okay, well, continuing on with reports, I have a couple more questions. What if I wanted to run a report that had a filter prompt or something like that? For example, I want to look at work done over a certain date range. Does OMS have the ability to add in these types of prompts for the end user to enter in information?
Yes, I'm sure, I know you did these. I did them too, where you want to get a date range. Right here is prompting me for that date range. So I could go back maybe 3 months in time and pick the date range that I want, and that's prompting me to enter those, and I'll just run it through today and then hit Run Report. And now I'm going to see what tasks were performed in those date ranges here that are illustrated at the top. So I've got some good information about what was my most expensive activities, how many were done by department, and again, the activities with the individual task IDs.
So I can really configure the user prompts however I want, if I want to break it down by date range or by asset type or by department.
Yep. Exactly.
And modify these reports as well, so I can have maybe add my logo or a picture or something else, just like any other report.
Yeah, all the reports are the same in that respect.
Okay, great. Well, this might be the easiest question, but let's talk about what I like to call a quick and dirty or an ad hoc report. Sure. The example I always use is it's usually the end of the day, somebody comes in and wants to get a report of some specific types of information. And maybe that report isn't necessarily a out-of-the-box report, but I need to get information out quickly. Is there an easy way for me to push content out with just a simple click?
Yes. I've opened up the Work tab, and we see we have 302 open tasks. And again, like you said, end of the day, hey, what have we got going on, what's coming up, etc. All I have to do is go over to the right-hand part of the column and see this Export button, and you'll see this many places in our system. Anytime you see that, you just click it, and you can immediately have a report of those activities. It opens into a CSV file and gives you that availability right there. You can see everything you want.
Well, that seems pretty simple. And now I can use the power of Excel to maybe make pie charts or graphs or whatever types of information I want.
Sure, exactly. You can highlight, you know, anything you can do, obviously, in Excel you could use here.
All right, so let's say that that's great information, Todd, but I need some more information. How easy is it for me to add content to that table without having to go through a whole report building process?
Okay, again, we can just pick our column selector, and I could get more information by just clicking on it. Any information that I want to have on here, I picked 3 extra parts of the column. Those are going to populate at the end, and so I can move those columns around and put kind of nest them wherever I want them. So I could put those together and put them exactly where I want them to be as far as the report goes. And then I could simply, again, just like we did before, I can simply hit export. And so now the due date, estimated start, and estimated stop dates are going to be part of our export. And right there is where they are. Right there where I'm clicking, and now we've got that extra information.
So it's really what you see is what you get as far as that table and the export functionality is.
Exactly. And then I could even, obviously, on the columns, if I wanted to sort higher priority, I could do ascending or descending, and then remove the filter and ascending, descending on any one of these columns. So I can make the information look exactly the way I want to.
So, and then just to be clear, Todd, you've added a few columns of data, just like you changed the colors of some of your layers or created filters. All of those are based on your login credentials. So your table may look significantly different than how I have my table set up. Is that correct?
That is correct. Again, it's by your user ID sign in, so mine could look vastly different. So yeah, that's the beauty of it. I can see the information I want. You can see the information that you want.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, so while we're here, Todd, we talked about some of the functionality features, the interface in particular, some of the reporting differences between Navigator and OMS. One thing that we've seen on basically every page has been this map, and we haven't really talked a lot about the GIS piece. So let's take an opportunity now and talk about how Cartograph interacts with Esri and GIS. As you can see, we have an Esri base map that's showing up here. And I think it's important for our users to understand how close of a relationship we have with Esri. We have a bidirectional editing capability with your Esri feature classes. And so what that means is that I can go into the Cartograph administrator piece, which we're not going to have time for today, but we can certainly talk to those individuals that are interested in that admin piece a little bit offline. But essentially, I'd have the ability to take my feature classes and map those to the Cartograph layers. And I can map out particular attribute fields. So when I update something in GIS, those changes push over to the Cartograph database. And if I have the proper permissions, I update an attribute field in Cartograph. If that field is tied to the same attribute field in GIS, those changes will push over to GIS. So it really is a time saver from a number of organizations may update their asset management system and then have to either export a report or handwrite a note and give it to the GIS department to update those same attributes. Our bidirectional editing allows that process to be more streamlined and straightforward. Another thing I want to talk about is Todd's been showing a lot of different maps on different pages and things like that. Because of our tight integration with Esri, we have a map selector in the upper right-hand corner that Todd's going to pull down, and the end user has the ability to change the flavor of Basemap on every page that there is a map available. So right now we're looking at just a normal Esri street map, but let's say my organization has some high-res orthophotography or some other type of aerial imagery. And Todd, if we go to our imagery map and zoom in, once that thing pops up, we can see that OMS can consume that imagery information that my organization has. In addition, if my organization is publishing out web maps to Arcgis Online, I can use that and OMS can consume that base map. So a good example of that would be, Todd, if we switch our map to our planimetric map, and this planimetric map is going to basically show a parcel and building outline map. And as this map refreshes, we'll start to see some content show up on here.
Let me refresh here.
So while Todd is refreshing that,
there we go.
So our planimetric map is going to show up, and our parcel line, and maybe it's a live demo, Todd.
There we go.
There we go.
It's live.
Okay, so here we're looking at a parcel map with some building outlines. If I wanted to, I could set up some dynamic labeling and publish that content out. So as I zoom in or zoom out, labels could turn on and turn off. Excuse me, in this case, I don't have any labels other than the street names turning on and off. But the point of the matter is that as my organization is pushing content out, OMS can consume that content. And Todd talked earlier about the different roles and permissions that we have. We can certainly drop different maps into different roles as well. So my parks people can look at these 2 maps, and my water people can look at these 3 maps, but both groups can look at my parcel information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really nice to have.
Yeah, and one of the best things I like is how OMS accesses and consumes Arcgis Online content. So let's say there was some information that was available out on Arcgis Online as a publicly available layer or web map, and I wanted to bring that content into my OMS environment. It's content that I didn't create. I'm just using it because it's available to me. And I think a good highlight of this, Todd, is if we go and choose our live traffic map, I can now see content that another organization has provided for me. Maybe. There we go. All right, so our live traffic map in our demo database happens to be in West Des Moines, Iowa. And
let me refresh that.
So live traffic data is being pushed into OMS. It's just a base map. It's not affecting any of the content that I have. Here we can see a bunch of, there's not a storm in West Des Moines today, I guess, like it is here. All the traffic is moving very well on the interstate and on some of the side streets. But the point is you can consume different data sources and different types of data from ArcGIS Online right into the OMS environment. And again, we need to stress that OMS is a web-based application. So a couple of different things. We can host your data. You can host your data. Your GIS data can stay on-premise, and we can host your Cartograph data, and they'll talk to one another. There's really a lot of different flavors that we can go about in working with our clients.
Yeah, and I think it's good to point out, too, that this is also available on our mobile platform, you know, that we do have this availability where we can have these maps available, and, you know, that's a huge feature, too.
Yeah, I think it really allows you to start making some real true data-driven decisions based on content that you have already in your GIS or your asset management system like Cartograph, and borrow other people's content. So maybe we've had some clients that are using information from ArcGIS Online for streetlights and how much light is being generated, and comparing that to the graffiti calls or graffiti requests that they're getting in. So they can either request a new light to be installed or do some other kind of mitigation work.
Yeah, just very, very powerful tools to have that connection between Cartegraph OMS and GIS. Just very powerful tools. Right.
So I know we've got a ton of questions that we want to get through. We've gone through a very top-level overview of OMS and tried to highlight the significant differences between Cartograph Navigator and Cartograph OMS. And one of the things, Todd, and I know we have a number of questions on the mobile piece. We haven't even had an opportunity to talk about mobile, but Cartograph does have a mobile application that many of the same features and functionality that we looked at today, we can take out in the field with our Cartograph for iPad app. Yeah. So it's really designed for the person out in the field. We can create assets in the field. We can enter resources against work. We can create work against assets, and even view requests, all with the iPad. What's nice about that, Todd, is that if I'm using the iPad out in the field and I'm taking pictures of my assets, those pictures are automatically attached to that record.
Yeah, I know. I've always said, you know, once I got into OMS and saw our mobile platform, that was one of the biggest things personally that I would have benefited from when I was a field staff member. I've always said I would have loved to have had an iPad out in the field. My work would have been much, much easier and more streamlined, and it would have saved me a lot of time for sure.
Exactly. So let's start answering some of these questions. So one of the questions, timely, based on our mobile conversation, do you support any other type of mobile devices? Right now we have a Cartograph for iPad app. We are an iPad shop from a mobile application. We do not support Android at this time, but we have had some clients that are taking out a Microsoft Surface Pro out in the field. It's not necessarily a unique app. It's the full browser experience. However, they are taking those types of devices out in the field. Another question, more related to the presentation as a whole, but someone was wondering if this was going to be available as a recording. Yes, it is, and Damian will talk about that as we start wrapping up. Another question related to GIS. Can we use Portal for ArcGIS in place of ArcGIS Online? Yes, of course, you certainly can. There are pros and cons to both, and our team will be happy to talk to you about what is the best fit for your organization. Another question based on Active Directory, I think probably related to our roles conversation. Does OMS support Active Directory? Yes, it does. That it was a change with one of the last 2 releases that we've had, but we can safely say yes. Another question, more Esri stuff. Everyone has Esri questions, GIS questions. Can you display only local data, no Esri Basemap data? Yes, you can display your data. You can display some of the Esri information that they have available or content that you're creating. It's really up to you on how much or how many different base maps you want to have available. Can you access child-level data on Ad-Hoc reports? So depending on how we have it set up for the child data, in some cases yes, in some cases no. It really depends on what we're looking at for the data. With that, if you didn't want to use an ad hoc report, we can easily get to that child data by designing a report consuming that information. There was a question on can we see what the Cartograph administrator side of the application looks like. Again, I think I talked a little bit about that earlier, but if you are interested in seeing that, please contact either Todd or myself or your respective account executive, and we can certainly set up a conversation to have with you on that. Another question from a Navigator user. And Todd, feel free to help answer some of these questions.
Well, you're the GIS professional. They've been all GIS, so I'm treading in waters that you're the expert in.
All right. So what does the migration from Navigator to OMS look like? What support help do we get for this process? That's actually a really good question and very timely considering what we have been talking about this morning. Typically, in a nutshell, what happens is you're going to work with your account executive. We're going to run a report on your existing Navigator content and see and work with you as the client of what information do you have that you want to carry forward to the OMS world and what information would you like to leave in the Navigator world. When you move from OMS or from Navigator to OMS, you're still going to be able to retain a copy of the Navigator database as kind of a historical read-only type of database. I know a lot of organizations have fantastic information, but maybe the right choice isn't to bring every year of content over. Maybe we have really good data for the last 3 years, so we're going to leave the remaining or the first 7 years back in the Navigator world. There's a pretty straightforward process that we go through. We work with the client, and we populate the information in the database, and then set you up with a sandbox to play with it, make sure everything is working, and then go forward from there before you go live. So a lot of different conversation pieces that happen, and it's not like you just install OMS and there's no contact with us. We do a real good job of working with the client to make sure that OMS is, 1, the right fit for them, and 2, we can bring in all of their content that they want to use to be successful in the OMS world.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Quint. Our implementation specialists are really, really solid in their discussions with the client, making sure that everything's set up in the new system exactly the way it needs to be. A lot of good conversations happen. I know I've talked to clients where they said, you know, we figured out workflows better, we figured out our processes better, and I know I can speak from that experience of not only myself, but seeing other clients realizing, hey, our first year or 2 of data, it was kind of an experiment, kind of a trial and error, and not all that data necessarily needs to come over, but a lot of really good conversations happen around that topic for sure. And I know that when you migrate to OMS, you're going to have a really, really good feeling that you've got the best data possible and you've got the best path forward for your organization.
Right. Good point, Todd. Another question dealing specifically with treatment plants, and maybe location isn't necessarily important for things within a plant. And can Cartograph handle that? Yes, we can. We haven't showed it today. That'll be the subject of a future webinar, but Cartograph has a container component relationship for buildings or intersections or parks. In other words, we have a polygon, which is the building, that is treated as a top-level asset. There are certain things we do to that asset. Within that building or polygon are a bunch of other pieces or components. They in themselves are their own top-level asset. They all have unique inspection schedules, maintenance schedules, costs associated to those. All of those can be tracked individually and rolled up to the overall cost of the plant or the polygon or the container. To be more generic, those locations do not necessarily have to have a spatial location. So if I had 3 pumps in my water treatment plant, I wouldn't necessarily have to give them a spatial location. I could just reference that they are within this plant and then set up my work and maintenance routines.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to know that, you know, especially it can get very crowded on the map. You know, that's the big thing because you have a lot of components within that container, and those locations kind of would just appear to be one big blob of assets if you gave all of them spatial locations.
Mm-hmm. Getting a question on, we're getting a number of questions on the cost. Todd and I are probably the wrong people to ask about costs of things, so please work with your account executive if you have specific questions about the cost for your organization on moving from Navigator to OMS and any implementation charges. One question, is it easy to see child record data within OMS? Yes, some of the examples Todd was showing you from the attachments to the inspections, those are all considered child pieces of information. Those are all part of that. And just open up one of those segments, Todd, on the bottom.
One of the pavement segments?
Yeah, doesn't matter which one. And just slide down to the task list. So here's an example of a child record set. It's a task list. Think of that as the event log from the Navigator days. So with that, I know we've got a few more questions and we're getting close to our time limit. Anything else, Todd, you'd like to add in closing?
Well, I think it just bears repeating that the transition, I know you did it, I did it, coming from the Navigator world as clients and going immediately into the OMS world as employees. You know, we both experienced this firsthand, and I know you and I have discussed that this transition is much, much easier. And as we go on site with clients, we see that the usage, the adoption rates are much higher with OMS. Many more people like to use the system because it's clean, it's easy to use. The mobile platform is absolutely beautiful and really shows very well and works very well in the field. So it's a lot easier to get people on board and excited about the system.
Right. Good point, Todd. And one of the things I think both Todd and I have probably forgot to mention is, and this is based on another question that just came in, about their old VersaView layers and assets that they've created. Does OMS have the ability for us to consume that information? Yes, we can still create unique assets that don't necessarily come out of the box, and those can be implemented within the OMS environment. So if you're a current Navigator user and you have a number of Versa applications, let's have a conversation about what you have. We may already have a solution for that, and it might be a very easy migration path. There may be something that's very unique to your own organization. We can certainly have a conversation and either help you build that or teach you how to create those types of things. So with that, thank you everybody this morning for sitting in on our webinar, and please pay attention to our website for upcoming future webinars. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Quint, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to be able to present this to you today.
All right. Thanks again, Todd and Quint, for the presentation. I also wanted to add, if you guys are in the area, Cartograph is a gold sponsor at next week's Esri Water Conference in Austin, Texas. and our attending staff would love the opportunity to sit down and discuss the Cartograph product further, or even provide you with a one-on-one demo. You can contact me for further details, or check out Cartograph Campus for details as well. And thank you for taking the time to join today's webinar. If you'd like to learn more about OMS and other municipal industry topics, be sure to visit the Learn section at cartograph.com. And if your question wasn't answered, or if you have other questions related to this webinar, just include it in reply to the follow-up email you're receiving from us shortly. And once received, a Cartograph representative will get back to you with an answer. And thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.